Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Riverfront. This is episode number 538 of the world's most dangerous podcast, where we talk about the Cincinnati Reds and occasionally Eric Owens. I'm Chad Dotson, back again as your host. With me today, an old friend of the show, back again from RedLegNation.com, from RedsMinorLeagues.com, from your Twitter feed.
Oh boy.
It's Doug Gray. How are you, Doug?
I'm good. How you doing today, Chad?
Listen, I'm doing great. Okay, I just got to tell you, I'm doing great.
It's always good to hear. I like that so much better than the alternative.
Yes, exactly. And often, as you all know, in recent years, recent seasons, it's been the alternative, but not today because your Cincinnati Reds just had the best week they've had in a long, long time. Now, that's one way to frame it. They did have a 4-game winning streak this past since our last episode of the show. That's not nothing, right, Doug Gray?
I mean, that matches the win total they had coming into the week for May, I think. So, I mean, yeah, that is one way to frame it. They had a very good week.
They did have a very good week. Now, so they also had a very disappointing week in many ways. So since the last episode of the podcast, the Reds did maybe the most surprising thing that's happened all year. They swept maybe the best team in the league, the Los Angeles Dodgers.
The poor hapless Dodgers?
The poor hapless Dodgers. They're about to tank. And then won the first game against St. Louis and thought, oh man, 4-game winning streak, got a shot to win a series against the Cardinals. And then of course they vomited all over themselves the rest of that series and lost the Cardinal series. But let's just start here if we could with the Dodgers series, because what just happened? What did we see and how did that happen? And is it just baseball's crazy sometimes?
I think that it's baseball's crazy sometimes. I mean, I always think about baseball in terms of football records because, I mean, now in the NFL you play 17 games in a season, but when they were playing 16, the best team in the league, I mean, they go 14-2, 13-3. In baseball terms, that'd be like 130, 140 wins in a season. That just doesn't happen. Like the worst baseball teams in football records would be like 6-10. That's 60 wins, 102 losses. Like even the really bad teams still win plenty of games. That's what happens. If the Reds had to play the Dodgers 162 times, I mean, maybe they'd win 60 of them. Maybe they win 50 of them, but they win a lot of them. They just happen to win those 3.
Yeah, and the way I've always heard it put was the very worst teams in baseball are going to win 60 games. The very best teams are going to lose 60 games. I mean, you're fighting over the middle 40 or whatever, I guess it is. And so it's why baseball's weird. And it's why a series like that can maybe give us some false hope. Or is it real hope? I mean, we'll talk about the offense, I guess. But the pitching, I mean, the pitching is somehow the stats are good, right? The production is good. I'm not sure how, given the fly balls, but that's still something to be optimistic about, right? Going forward.
I mean, yeah, if they can keep it going.
Yeah, big if.
Maybe it's because I've been a Cincinnati Reds fan since birth. I have some questions about whether the pitching staff can keep pitching well moving forward, but I think this is a good pitching staff. I'm not sure if they're a great pitching staff. I like a lot of the guys that are on the staff, but Great American Ballpark, Chad. It makes weird and bad things happen sometimes.
Well, it does, and I think you're right. I think there's listen. I don't think this is a bad pitching staff like the Reds have had. I don't think even if they come back to earth a little bit, it's not a pitching staff like we've seen in the last 20 years. I think it's at least a decent pitching staff that's maybe punching a little bit above their weight right now, or maybe not. I don't know. Again, I want to be optimistic. This offense, let's yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm repeating myself a little bit from past weeks, but I just don't see any way that this offense gets better until August at the best if we get a couple guys back. I mean, I just the lineup is just not good, and so I don't know. I try to be optimistic, but
Well, here I'll give some optimism. Right now Spencer Steer's not hitting at all. He's a better hitter than nothing.
true.
Ellie De La Cruz hasn't hit since April ended. He's better than what he's been this month. Christian Encarnacion Strand's been out, and he's been replaced with Mike Ford, who he's no longer with the club. But I think that he provides at least a minimal upgrade, and I think that what he did in April was probably a little bit injury related because he didn't have a broken wrist, then he did have a broken wrist, and they think it was from something that happened previously. So maybe he wasn't 100%, and that explains some of what he did in April. Noelvi Marte, he's still, let's see, about a month away, but that's before August. Maybe he helps a little bit. TJ Friedel's been out a lot. He's back now. Maybe that helps a little bit. I mean, I'm with you. I don't think there's a big turnaround coming for any particular player who's going to step in and just kind of fix things all on their own. But I do think that a lot of the offense has underperformed, and they're generally speaking, I don't think any of them are as bad as they've been at certain parts of this season.
Well, I think that's fair. And but again, I wouldn't use that as an argument for a drastically improved offense at any point. But yeah, if all these guys just kind of get back to the back of their baseball cards, then they'll be better than what we've seen. But what do we make of Jonathan India? He hit that grand slam against the Dodgers, and I think, what was he, 3 for 3 that day? And I thought, here we go. I didn't really think this. I wanted to think this. Here we go. Jonathan India's back. Are we at the point now in Jonathan India's career where we just need to accept Jonathan India is not the player we hoped he would be based on that rookie season? I mean, are we ready to pass judgment yet?
I mean, coming into this year, my stance was I think he's been playing a lot when he shouldn't have been. Dinged up a lot. He's the kind of guy who you literally have to drag him out of the clubhouse to keep him from playing. And let
me just say, that was my position as well. I thought we don't really know who Jonathan India is because he's been playing hurt so often. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Hey, your show. I'm just here for fun. But no, that's kind of where I was at the beginning of the year. I mean, he hasn't hit this year. He's walked some, so his on-base percentage has been fine. But, I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but last I looked, he was slugging under 300 for the season. That's not going to work. That's not going to work even as a bench player. And he's in a starting role right now. And he's probably going to remain in a starting role until at least late August when Matt McClain returns, unless something drastic happens. They don't have anybody to replace him right now.
Yeah, and even last year he was basically a league average hitter in a lot of ways, but it was that slugging percentage, which was higher than in his second season. He's slugging 100 points lower than he did last year. I mean, the on base 340, I'll take. You can work with that, but
it's so empty though.
It's completely empty. It's completely empty. 4 doubles, 1 triple, 3 home runs in over 200 plate appearances. It's just, I mean, he's walking some, he's getting on base, but how much does that help? Especially if you're not an elite defensive player. Maybe you can squint and accept it if you're an elite defensive player. He's not.
No, and I don't. I mean, the more I think about it, it's just I get closer every day to just, hey, I'm just going to have to accept that he's not the hitter that we all had hoped he was. I think he's patient to a fault. And I wonder if being more aggressive would not help him. But I don't know. I feel like we can make this argument for a lot of different guys on things that might help them at the plate right now on this club. And they're all just a mess. It's just a big mess.
Yeah, the best case scenario might have been that he got on a hot streak and the Reds could deal him at the trade deadline, just as hopefully Matt McClain's close to returning. That's not going to happen. and they won't do that anyway because the Reds don't trade players at the trade deadline. But so I try to break down the season sometimes into these spans to say, hey, here are the teams they're playing against over the next 3-4 weeks. If they can do such and such against that, it's a silly way to look at the schedule. But about a month ago, a lot of us looked at the calendar and said, all right, the next 38 games is going to be a brutal stretch. And I wrote, if the Reds can just somehow figure it, and this was back, the Reds were a little more than a month ago, the Reds were doing okay at that time. I said, if they can just finish 500 in this stretch, then man, they're going to have a shot to the schedule loosens up a little bit. You get to play some division opponents and you got a shot to make some noise. So it was a 38 game stretch that I said the Reds have now played 34 of those 38 games. Their record in those 34 games, 11-23. That's not ideal, Doug Gray. It's not ideal.
I mean, I'm not Branch Rickey, but the math does not look very good on that one.
So there's 106 games remaining. And so I look at the next stretch. The next, let's see, next 31 games. No, 29 at this point, but there were 31 before the last two games of the Cardinals. So we'll say 32, including the Cardinal series. 25 of those 31 are against division opponents. Now they're, 1-2 so far. The only non-conference, I'm still in basketball mode. The only non-division opponents are three on the road against the Colorado Rockies, who are terrible. And then and then the other 5 are going to be against at Great American Ballpark against the Red Sox, who are mediocre, and the Cleveland Guardians, who are not mediocre. But the ever important Ohio Cup will be on the line, so you got to expect the Reds are going to show up for those games, right? Ohio Cup, Doug.
They will be putting on uniforms that day. Yes,
they will literally show up. This we can guarantee. Yes. So. And again, this is me kind of trying to rationalize, but okay. So we have 31 games here against, teams that it could really make a difference if the Reds start playing well. And it could, if you look at the standings at this point, it genuinely could, right?
Yeah. I hate to even bring up what David Bell says in press conferences, because a lot of the time it's just, he's got to say something, but he mentioned, hey, we're done with the West Coast trips. And that kind of means something. It kind of throws off your whole your rhythm, being 3 hours difference. And hey, he's been in the game a long time. Maybe he actually knows something here. But yeah, they've got a lot of ground to make up, and it's not just it helps when you're beating up teams in your own division, but you're only playing one of those teams at a time. You're in last place. What is it? They back 9 games now.
9 games back of first.
Yeah. Like, you're not gonna just run the gauntlet. It's gonna take a long time to make up 9 games. The schedule looks favorable if you're a good team, but the Reds are a bad team. Everybody's looking at the schedule and they see the Reds and they're like, "Yeah, this is what we need to cure our ails."
But Doug, the Reds are only 4.5 out of the wild card.
Well,
now, they're 6 or 7?
Everybody's
6 or 7 teams ahead of them, but right. No, I mean you're right. I'm straining a little bit to find a reason to be excited about what's a fairly rough stretch, but a year ago, the Reds were in a similar spot on Memorial Day weekend. And they took off, and we had a great June, and everything was beautiful. Now, the difference, as I pointed out in Cincinnati Magazine this week, is that the cavalry's not coming from the minor leagues this year.
No.
And you're the minor league guy, Doug. Who's coming up from AAA or even from AA to save the day this year? Where are the Ellies? Where are the McLeans? Who's coming up?
They don't exist this year.
They're already here.
It's not even just a position, guys. Like, last week I wrote about the top 5 Reds pitching prospects. One guy's out for the year. and the other 4 are just terrible. They've been downright bad this year. Rhett Lauder, last year's first-round draft pick, 7th overall, second pitcher taken in the draft. His ERA is over 9 in Double-A. I mean, he was supposed to be a guy that, in theory at least, was going to be fast-tracked. And he's gotten to Double-A, and he has struggled. Connor Phillips has more walks and hit batters than he has innings pitched in AAA this year. He's not going to help you out anytime soon. I mean, there's nothing. There's nobody in AAA right now that you can foresee stepping up and helping this club in the next couple of months, short of just an absolute miracle turnaround.
I focus mostly on the big league guys because, and I accuse you often of just making up names in these minor league guys. But can we unpack a couple of those? What's it? You got somebody?
I remember a couple of years ago, I was talking about Lars Nootbaar, and given that they were just playing him the other day, whenever he came up to the plate, I thought about you. Like you made that name up. You made that one up.
It does not exist. All right, that one existed. I'll give you credit on that one. I do want to unpack quickly, since you mentioned them, and I think a lot of our listeners and/or viewers would be interested in that. Rhett Lauder. Now, I think that you'll agree that you're not calling him a bust, right? As a lot of people might say. He still has an extremely high ceiling, but
he's struggling right now, which for the most part, I mean, everybody goes through that at some point in their minor league career. It's very seldom somebody doesn't have at least a small portion of time where they have to make that adjustment.
Yeah, but what has happened has not diminished his luster in my mind at all. Okay, this is baseball. Baseball's hard, but as you sort of alluded to, the book on him was that this is a guy that some people thought we could be in the big leagues by later this year. I mean, that kind of talent, a college guy, incredible hair, all that added up to a guy that you thought might have a shot, and it's just it hasn't gone well. Now, the switch could flip at any time because he's learning presumably every day. Although he went to Wake Forest, so I'm not sure he's going to be able to learn much. They don't have great students there.
Yeah, but he's out of Wake Forest now, so maybe now is when he does learn.
Okay, there we go. Yeah. So, but let me just ask you that because I made a claim. But has your opinion changed even slightly about Lauder after watching what he's done? Because you've watched him more closely than I have.
The only thing that I would say has changed is I had only seen him pitch in college. College hitters aren't pro hitters. They can't do certain things that pro hitters are going to be able to do to a guy. The stuff is the same. It's what you want to see. I just think that maybe he understood how to pitch to college guys, and now he's still got to figure out how to pitch to professional guys who can battle just a little bit tougher against some of his stuff. They're going to lay off the pitches that are 2 inches outside that college hitters weren't going to do, and so he's got to make that adjustment to move him just a little bit closer to the plate. But one of the things that I've seen, and let's see, he's made 9 starts, and I've watched all of his starts. This is going to sound really silly, Chad, but I think he throws too many strikes. I think that he throws too many pitches in the zone, and he's going to have to make the adjustment to try and start pitches in the zone and get the ball to go out of the zone a little bit more, because professional hitters, they're good. You throw, even, when you have good stuff, great stuff, some of these guys can hit it. And the closer you get to the big leagues, the more guys can hit that kind of stuff. And I think that's the adjustment that I believe he needs to make. Not a professional scout. I just watch a lot of baseball. But that's kind of what I see, is that he throws a few too many strikes, and the better hitters on these clubs can take advantage of that.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting to hear. Because you're right. And the thing I've always heard, I love the ways, I don't even remember who put it this way, but these great pitchers, you know what? The hitters driving a Lexus too, or whatever, the hitters get paid too. These are not, and vice versa. But baseball's all about adjustments, and we'll have to see. That's interesting. Interesting analysis.
Lauder, again, he's had 9 professional starts. That's nothing.
Yeah,
That's next to
exactly.
nothing. Like, and he's in Double A, and I understand that yes, he was a college pitcher. He was an advanced college pitcher, but still, he's 9 starts into his professional career. He's going to have to
Speaking
learn
of
things.
college, yeah, that's the way it works. But can I just divert us to college, because the NCAA tournament is a starting in college baseball. Doug, who you pulling for?
Well, my team, I feel that they got railroaded. They should have made it. They should have made it, and they did not. But I guess that's a different story for a different day. Uh, I'm just
What?
rooting for good baseball. Like I want to see exciting baseball because I don't have a rooting interest at this point.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Do I?
Yeah, you really
Is it,
do. Come
is
on.
it Virginia? Am I rooting for
Come
Virginia?
on. Virginia hosting a sub-regional? Come on. Come on.
Okay, I'll root for Virginia for you.
All right, I
Just
appreciate
for you. No one else.
that. Thank you. I appreciate that. The other guy I wanted to just, since you mentioned him, talk about, because this guy's been a big disappointment to me, and that's Connor Phillips. What has happened? I mean, he seemed to be on the fast track. He did actually make it last year, but that was mostly because the Reds just
They didn't have another
didn't have
choice.
pitchers. Yeah. What's the deal there?
So I was thinking about this the other day, and what's interesting is Connor Phillips has always had great stuff. That's never been a question, But it's always been, can he throw enough strikes? And then, nice, very nice.
Sorry, I had to switch to the University of Virginia cap for Doug, since he said he was cheering for him.
Yes,
If you're
I
watching on
appreciate
YouTube.
it. But last year, Connor Phillips kind of had a breakout in Double A, and then he went to Triple A, and he inconsistent, and then he got to the big leagues and was just consistently bad. And then this year, it's been just consistently bad. In half of his starts, he's walked 5 batters or more. Like that's not going to work at all anywhere at any level. And I started thinking about it. What was different about that breakout? And then I remembered in the first half last year in Double A, they used the pre-tacked baseball. Every pitcher was better last year in the first
is that
half
right?
in Double A. Yes. And he got out of that league before they stopped tacking the baseball. And he's just, I don't want to say he's been bad ever since, because he had a few good starts at AAA last year after he got promoted, but he hasn't been consistently good. And this year he's just been really bad. And I really do wonder if maybe we didn't get tricked, but not realize it at the time a little bit because of that.
That is that's an interesting theory, actually, and it's something that we talked about a lot with guys like Lucas Sims and T.G. Antone, rest in peace, about the sticky stuff and how much that was gonna change things. I hadn't thought about that in terms of Connor Phillips. So I don't know, rooting for the guy. He's had some success, and the Reds need some success, but again, that's not. We're talking about pitchers, and that's not exactly the problem at this point. Let me break down the standings here quickly for those of you that live out there in Middletown. Milwaukee's leading the division. They're running away with it. No, I wouldn't say running away with it. Second place somehow. I thought they were dead in the water. The St. Louis Cardinals are 5 games back. The Chicago Cubs 5.5 back. The Pittsburgh Pirates are in 4th place, 7 back, and your Cincinnati Reds are behind the Pirates, behind the Cubs, behind the Cardinals. In 5th place, the 4th worst record in the National League, 9 games out of first place. All right. Question of the day, though, Doug. Question of the day is this. Is Hunter Greene officially an ace now?
No.
Oh, Doug, come on, man.
Look, I'm not saying he's not pitching like one, but he's not one. Not right now. To me, if you're gonna be an ace, you've got to have a long track record of being a true number 1 pitcher. And
are you suggesting 3-4 starts is not enough to justify calling him an ace?
Look, yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting.
Literally, that's what you're saying. Exactly right. Can we say this? He's looking more like an ace recently than we've seen, at least for a little bit of an extended stretch. It's been a while since we've seen signs that maybe he's turning the corner. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is totally fair. I think that what we're seeing right now is, I mean, for the most part, I think what everybody hoped to see from him. Um, I, what is there to say negatively about the last, I don't know, 7 weeks with Hunter Greene? It's
Yeah.
tough to say anything bad. Like he had, a hiccup once in there where I think he gave like 4 runs in 7 innings. That was it. I mean, he's pitched really, really well for, I mean, most of this season. It's funny, like after the first 3 or 4 starts, you could still hear some people saying, "Oh, send him back to AAA," which was
Yeah.
hilarious at the time. Like no, that's not going to happen for a multitude of reasons. But after those first 3 or 4 starts, I mean, he's been pretty much lights out. He's going
I
deep
mean,
into games. He's keeping the ball in the ballpark. He's throwing strikes. I mean, he's just been really stinking good.
and you mentioned you touched on a couple of things that really have me. I mean, I've been excited about Hunter Greene ever since he torched me on Twitter, and I was required to be excited about him as a result of our legal settlement. But in his last three starts, I've seen some things that make me think, oh, maybe finally, he's learning. I mean, he's always been learning, but I look at these last three starts. He's not gone fewer than 6 innings in any of them. That was a bugaboo early on, not being able to get out of the fourth or fifth inning. In those three starts, he has walked 4 batters in 3 starts. I mean, that's huge. He's striking out guys. And you said the other thing, keeping the ball in the ballpark, 1 home run in those last 3 starts. And we're talking about 3 starts, 2 of them against the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are a good team. 1 of them against Arizona. You may remember Arizona that made the World Series last year. Now they're not playing like a World Series team this year, but still, I'm really, really encouraged, seeing him get 7 innings, 6 1/3 innings with around 100 pitches. That's different than what we've seen. And if you look at his stats for the season, now they're starting to look pretty good. 3-2 record for those of you that care about win-loss, but 3.06 ERA. Listen, that's good. His ERA plus 137. So for those of you again in Middletown, that roughly 37% better than the average pitcher is a way to think about that. And for those of you that were yelling for him to go back to AAA, he's 24. He's 24 years old. And so I think Doug's right, as much as you don't know how much it pains me after all these years of knowing Doug to have to admit that. It's literally maybe the first time I've ever admitted that. No, he's not an ace yet, but there are some signs yet.
And see, that's important, because if we weren't seeing what we're seeing, we couldn't even say yet. We wouldn't be having this conversation.
There are signs that he's turning the corner. I think that's fair, though, right? Or wrong?
Yes, definitely.
How about those Virginia Cavaliers, Doug Gray?
I'm ready. I am so ready. This is going to be a fun couple of weeks.
You need to cheer for a guy named Henry Ford. He invented the car, and he also
I do like cars.
There you go. Well, he invented them, and he's also hitting cleanup as a freshman for the Virginia Cavaliers. Also had the best name in college baseball, Harrison Didowick.
Hey, there we go. Real quick question. Is Henry related to Mike?
Oh, no, because Henry still has a job. He's getting that NIL money.
Hey. Oh, yeah,
it's a good time to talk about the transactions. Doug has led us perfectly into it's almost like he has access to the outline here. So let's talk about the news of the week. TJ Friedel is back. I want to talk about what that means to the lineup, but also Mike Ford, rest in peace, designated for assignment. What a strange trip it's been.
Yeah, we'll never get the full story on what the heck happened there, but man, I want to know so badly. I want to know what happened between, let's just say, May 1st and now.
You want to briefly recap what happened for those of you that haven't been listening?
Okay, so Mike Ford was crushing the ball in AAA, and he had an opt-out, and he took it. And that gave the Reds like 2 or 3 days or so to decide whether they were going to call him up to the big leagues or let him become a free agent. Like, you can be a free agent. We don't need you. And then, like 2 days after he became a free agent, Christian Encarnacion Strand got hurt, put him on the injured list, and the Reds were like, "Oh, now you get to be a big leaguer." So they signed him to a big league contract at that point. 2 days later, he shows up and he's batting third for like 9 out of the next 10 days. So he went from literally not being good enough to be on the team to being the number 3 hitter in the lineup for like the first 2 weeks. And I can't wrap my head around the disconnect between the front office staff and the field staff. I will never understand it.
It's just dysfunctional. I can't figure it out. There's no explanation that makes any sense other than dysfunction. So Mike Ford, though, I appreciate you. You played hard while you were here. You really tried. You mashed in AAA. You did not mash in the big leagues. But TJ Friedl, we had this conversation, not you and I, but here on the show, had this conversation when he came back, 6 games before he went back on the injured list. I hate to even voice this. I'm of the opinion that last year we watched TJ Friedl's career year, and I hate that he didn't make the All-Star team, and I hate that he didn't get a Gold Glove because I don't think he'll ever reach those heights again. I think he's a perfectly cromulent player that maybe hit his peak last year. I hope I'm wrong because he plays his butt off. I love watching him play. Great defense. I like a guy that can bunt for a hit. I hate bunts for sacrifices, but I like watching him do it. But even if he's not the guy from last year, getting him back, listen, it's almost like a trade, Doug. It's almost like a trade for a good hitter. I think that's the way Nick Kroll would put it, right?
Yeah, I can't say what I need to say right now because I will get banned from this show. But yeah, I mean, I'm a TJ Friedl fan. I think that I'm with you a little bit. I don't think he's going to hit for the same kind of home run power moving forward. That's never really been a part of his game. He's never shown that before. And yes, he is kind of entering that prime power age range of his career, but there's just not much there that says that's a repeatable skill set for him. He still does a lot of things well, so I still think he's a starting caliber center fielder for most teams. Especially
Agree.
And I think he's an upgrade for this roster right now, without a doubt. Even if there are going to be some questions coming off of a broken wrist and a broken thumb. And can we talk about how quickly he returned from a broken thumb?
How is that possible?
I mean, I broke my thumb a while ago. Let me do the math here. Yeah, like 25 years ago. I was in a cast for 8 weeks. He returned in like 14 days, something like that. 10 days. I don't know. It was very, very quick. Doesn't make sense to me, but hey, if he can play through it, go for it, man. But that was a really big surprise to me. They were like, "Oh yeah, no, he's activated." I'm like, "Is he even eligible to be activated yet? Like, has it even been 10 days? Like, it was so quick."
Yeah. Well, yeah, David Bell made some mention that he might be coming back, and I thought, well, that's just David Bell being David Bell. He says these things sometimes, being kind of aggressive. But it turns out good. I hope he's good to go. But man, I hope he's also. And I don't know that it helps the team for him to push himself back. Although actually, an injured TJ Friedl is better than whoever else they're running out there. But if it keeps him from being full strength TJ Friedl for longer, I don't know. I'm gonna have to trust that the Reds know what they're doing here, and that's a fool's errand. Other transactions for the week. This is a good one. Reds activate Nick Lodolo. They optioned Carson Spears to AAA. Nick Lodolo. Let me tell you about Nick Lodolo.
Tell me about it, stud.
Nick Lodolo's a stud.
Yes.
Tell me why you just. Oh, you agree?
I do agree. Yes.
Oh, if that guy could stay healthy, he's been good whenever he's been healthy. Literally since he
very good.
So I'm happy to have Nick Lodolo back. I know you're upset about Nick Lodolo being back, but I'm happy. Tell me why you're upset about it, Doug.
Because unfortunately he wasn't back more sooner. I don't know, because he's really good. He's really good.
And he's a guy. We talked about Rhett Lauder earlier. Lodolo's a college guy that came in and sort of had a clue from the beginning. And it took him some time, he had to learn, and health has been the big issue with him. But he's the guy when there is drafted Louder that I thought, okay, let's follow the Lodolo path. Now they're not similar pitchers really in any way, other than being college guys. But Louder may get there, but I don't know. We talk about Hunter Greene being an ace. If Lodolo had been healthy the last 2 years, I think we've already would have crowned him the ace of this staff. Is that too aggressive?
No, because again, like you said, when he's been healthy, he's pitched like an ace. He just unfortunately hasn't been healthy enough to stay on the mound.
Doug, I guess I need to ask you this question. Can you find Lodolo and just ask him? Because I don't want to talk to pitchers about their health. Can you just ask him to remain healthy? That doesn't seem unreasonable.
Yeah, I'll do my best, but I'm not making any promises on that one.
So in his first start back from the injured list was against the Cardinals in the opening game of the series, 3-1 win for the good guys. He only went 5 1/3, but 5 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, 3 strikeouts, and just I don't know. We talked about Hunter Greene's ERA plus a minute ago. I told you it's 137. Nick Lodolo's is 135. He's just, and frankly, well, I don't know. It's to me, it's good. But let me ask you this question. Here's a way to think about it. If Lodolo and Greene are both healthy for the rest of their careers, which one has the better career? I have an opinion, but I want to see what you say.
With the caveat that they're both healthy for the rest of their careers, I'll take Hunter Greene. I think his stuff is just a little bit better.
Yeah,
and again, that's not a slight on Nick Lodolo. Again, like we were just talking, if he were healthy, he's probably the ace of the staff, and we'd have that cemented right now. He'd be the ace of the staff, given how well he's pitched when he's been healthy. But I think that Hunter Greene is, he's right there with him right this second. And I just think there's more room for growth given his raw stuff, and that he's still learning some things and figuring some things out. Whereas I think Lodolo has kind of already figured it out, and where he can go upward from here is a little bit more limited. But to be fair, I also think that for their careers at this point, he's a better pitcher than Hunter Greene has been too. Yeah. I'm not sure that he is necessarily right this second, but given their careers, I think that he has been.
It's a fun argument to have, and I think you're right on this one again. And to me, it comes down to this: Hunter Greene's 2 years younger. And so if they're going to be healthy, there's more room for growth. That's sort of what you were saying in terms of where their ceilings are. There's more room for growth for Hunter Greene. So I don't know. Interesting conversation. Bubba Thompson. Why would they ever waive Bubba Thompson? I don't understand this. You explain this to me.
Well, I think that he has it in his contract, given how many times he's been waived in his career, that after 2 months with the club, he has to be waived and see if another team wants to give him an opportunity. Yeah. That's a joke, just in case anybody is completely unaware. Bubba Thompson has been waived a lot over the last year. The Reds actually claimed him 2 different times off of waivers. This was the first time that he cleared waivers. And then the Reds outrighted him down to AA. So he's still with the organization. But yeah,
that's got to be a bummer to go from the big league roster to AA. That has to be a bummer.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to rip on Bubba Thompson, but when you hit like a $118, that's kind of on you a little bit. I know that he was not really put in a situation to succeed. He had like 18 at bats in 17 games. Like they pretty much try to use him only as a pinch runner or defensive replacement. So he rarely got a chance to swing the bat, but when he got that chance, he did not take any sort of advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, well, you do have to grab the brass ring when you get the shot, but he hit 111 in the big leagues. And I'll tell you this, here's what I have to say. If you gave me 18 at bats in the big leagues or whatever he had, I wouldn't hit 111.
No, you would not. Like you, Chad, but you would not have.
No, not a chance. So kudos to you, Bubba Thompson. You're better than me. All right, here's the transaction I really wanted to get your opinion on. It's a chance for you to go into Twitter mode, Doug. You ready?
I'm ready. The question is anybody else ready?
Is the audience ready for this? The Reds activated Alex Young from the injured list. Alex Young, who was sent down earlier this year. And they designated for assignment Brett Kennedy. Brett Kennedy was on the big league roster for some reason. Doug, make it make sense. The whole Alex Young, Brett Kennedy saga.
Well, I mean, Alex Young was healthy, so calling him up that makes sense. He was about to run out of his injured list rehab days, anyways. He's performed in the past. They were going to call him up. Now, why they chose to call up Brett Kennedy a week ago, I still cannot wrap my head around. His ERA was near 9 in AAA, and he was not on the 40-man roster. Now, I've seen the argument, hey, he was starting down there, he could cover some innings. Well, I mean, yeah, technically, so could I. When your ERA is near 9 in AAA, how many innings are you going to cover in big leagues? Unless you're just giving up the game you're going to pull them into. But it's not a situation where, they needed an emergency starter. Somebody didn't, I'm going to make up a situation here. This next day's starting pitcher didn't get in a car wreck and break his foot the night before, and they just what are we going to do? And they just called up the guy who was scheduled to pitch that day in Louisville. That's not what happened.
Right.
They had guys on the 40-man roster, whether it's relievers like Christian Roa, who, he began the year in the rotation, pitched poorly. They moved him to the bullpen. He's pitched multiple innings out of the bullpen. He's pitched better out of the bullpen. Hasn't really been good, but his ERA ain't 9 either. They could have called up Lyon Richardson to be, the starter. Again, hasn't pitched exactly well in AAA, but his ERA is under 4. The peripherals aren't exactly great, but he's not getting his brains beat in either, like Brett Kennedy was. Casey Legumina had thrown 0.1 innings in the previous 11 days. He's on the 40-man roster. They didn't call him up. Why? I mean, I know why they called him up. It's because they knew they needed the 40-man roster spot to bring in Alex Young, and they wanted to be able to designate somebody and not lose them. But that's not I said this on Twitter. This is not a move that a team trying to win baseball games makes.
That's it.
It's that simple. You do not call up either your worst or second worst pitcher in AAA in May when you're trying to win baseball games. You're just not. I mean, look, they're in a situation, and they got themselves in this situation. Nick Kroll did, and Brad Meter did. They are pretty much hamstrung because anybody with options in the pitching staff, they're not going to use them, and they've got a bunch of guys that are, they can't sit down without losing, and so they've got to try and make moves like this that go against actually trying to win baseball games, just so they can avoid, hey, maybe we have to lose Casey Legumina. Ooh, it just doesn't make sense. It's so infuriating. I can't quite take you seriously as a Major League Baseball organization trying to win baseball games when you call up Brett Kennedy at this point in time. It's one thing if he were finding success, but the guy was getting his brains beat in AAA. You had other options, and that's the one you made. Come on. You had 3 wins for May at that point, and that's the move you make. Come on.
It's a strategy. It is not a strategy that the Dodgers or the Yankees or any team that's actually trying to win big league baseball games would ever make. But I guess it's a strategy.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
It didn't pay off.
And it didn't, but to be fair, they also didn't get hurt by it because they didn't have to use him. Which
right.
they lucked out in that situation. He didn't have to enter the baseball game. So good for Brett Kennedy for getting his $4,000 per day in the big leagues that he got. Hey, that's not nothing. That's not nothing. But again, I'm happy for him. Yeah, I'm happy for him. But the Reds, I can't figure it out.
But we say it didn't pay. It didn't hurt the Reds, but it did hurt the Reds, I think, because the Reds had a roster spot occupied, even just for a little bit of time, by someone that had no business being there. And so
And
You
it's
put,
also somebody that they clearly did not want to use in the games.
right, and so
And
you
that's,
put your team.
that's the part that is just so frustrating. It's like, again, I'm going to go back to that. Again, I feel terrible basically talking trash on you, but it's like Bubba Thompson. Why was he on the roster? Like, he's clearly a guy that they did not trust using in baseball games.
Yeah.
Why? Like, what is happening?
Well, it's sort of the similar argument as to when the Reds and maybe other teams do this as much as the Reds. I don't think so, but maybe. When a guy's hurt and they keep him on the roster but don't use him, and so they play shorthanded deliberately, and we've seen that many times over the years. And that's you're right comparing it to Bubba Thompson. It's very similar. You're choosing to play with one hand tied behind your back when the other team has a full roster, and it may not hurt you on the field. It may not, but the reason you're doing it is because you're afraid of losing Casey Legamina. And look, kudos, that guy's got one of the best names. I want them to keep him. My son's named Casey. My son is named Casey Legamina Dotson. That's not
That's
true.
Interesting.
That's not his middle name, but it's one of the things that really should make clear to everyone that this Reds team, while we were excited about the possibilities for this season, and there are legitimate reasons to be optimistic about the future of this club, you kind of got to understand this. The management's really winning baseball games is not the number one priority. It's a priority. It's not. No, I mean, and all the evidence points in that direction. The whole Brett Kennedy thing, and I don't want to go too much further into this, but I just have to point out that the world's biggest Nick Kroll bootlicker on Twitter. Oh my gosh, I'm not going to mention any names, but seeing him and other Nick Kroll water carriers trying to contort themselves into defending Nick Kroll on this, just take the L on this one. Just take the L. It's really amazing. So, but we're gonna whatever. We're not gonna talk about
that.
Yeah, those guys. Doug, you wanna answer some viewer mail questions?
I'm ready. Hopefully.
So these questions, yeah, we need to move on to something more lighthearted. These questions come from actual viewers. I went out to the mailbox today, and I don't really have a mailbox. I have a mail slot, but I went out to the mailbox and I collected the mail, and these are actual letters from actual viewers. If they were not, could I do this?
You couldn't.
No, I couldn't. So first question these questions do come from our friends at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy. That's patreon.com/riverfrontcincy, where you too can support the world's most dangerous podcast. Joey Gaditza. Joey Gaditza is from a country up north. It's called Canada. It's where Canadians live, in Canada. So, I need to warn you about this, Doug. I don't think I told you about this, but my call for questions this week for viewer mail said you can ask Doug questions about baseball, but only non-baseball questions for me.
Hey, sure.
You're the expert.
You're going to get more fun questions, but yeah, that's fine.
So Joey's question: hello, gentlemen. That's using that term loosely. For Doug. For Doug, the new batch of prospects coming up in the next wave, who is the one that excites you the most? And then I'll answer my question from Joey.
So I'm going to take
is there one that excites you
a little bit. Oh, hear me out. And this is interesting because I feel like, 15, 20 minutes ago, I talked about how bad the starting pitching has been among the top 5 starting pitching prospects. I got a chance to really get a good look at Chase Petty the other day. Now, his last start, he did not pitch well. I'm going to be perfectly honest. He didn't make it out of the first inning. It was not good. The start before that, though, he showed me 2 pitches that when they were on, I've never seen him throw it like that before. I mean, I was getting a little hot and bothered watching that guy start the other day. And his fastball was in the upper 90s with good movement and good location. He's got a cutter this year that, it was disgusting. Like I It was so impressive, and he could throw it for strikes. He could throw it where he wanted it, and I mean, he just had the hitters just looking absolutely foolish all night. Again, his numbers in April were terrible. His first 4 starts in May were outstanding, and then the last time he did not have it. It was not there. He didn't get out of the first inning. But I'm gonna be honest, he might be the guy I'm most excited about right now, based on what he showed the other day. If I'm going to pick a position guy, Ricardo Cabrera down in Daytona. I mean, he's going to be a little bit further away. He's still a teenager. He's still in single A, but man, he's hitting really well. He's a guy they gave a huge signing bonus to. He was one of the top international signings of the year when he signed 2 years ago, and he's playing every bit as good as you could possibly expect. He hits, man. He hits, and when it's a guy that you expect to hit, they've got the tools to hit, and then they actually go out and do it. I don't know. It just gets me a little bit more excited than a guy who is just hitting really well, like Hector Rodriguez. Depending on who you talk to, some people they're not sold that Hector Rodriguez is going to hit nearly as well as he's hit for his entire career, and I can understand that a little bit. He does not. How do I want to put this? He'll swing at everything, but he's one of the guys. He's got really great bat control, so he makes contact pretty much with anything he swings at. And I understand where people say, oh, well, when he starts seeing the best pitchers on the planet, that's going to be a problem. Okay. But the guy's hit everywhere he's ever been. So, I don't know. I like what's there, but yeah, I think that he's going to need to walk a little bit more, be a little bit more selective, but he's a really interesting hitter.
Well, I'll just say this. Doug just mentioned 2 hitters that don't exist. I've never heard of them. I'm not sure they actually exist. And go use the Google machine. Maybe you can find out if Doug's telling the truth or not. Chase Petty, I'm going to make an admission about this. I was pretty vocal last trade deadline about Chase Petty being kind of the avatar for a guy that I'm like, let's trade him. I don't care. My position for many years has been trade all the prospects. A prospect is only as valuable to me as to what production they can provide on the big league level. And if that's in trade and getting a guy that helps on the big league level, or them, making it, until they get to the big league level, I don't care. And Chase Petty was a guy that I was like, just trade him. If you can get somebody good at the trade deadline that helps the team in it when they're in first place at the last trade deadline, if they're in first place, you can get a guy that can maybe help them get across the finish line, trade him. And I still believe that's true. But Chase Petty's the guy that I felt guilty about saying it about, because I really like that guy. And I really do think he has some ability, and I'll root for him if he's a Red eventually. So I'm interested to hear you say Chase Petty, because he has talent. The dude has talent. My question from Joey Gaditza is this: Chad, did you get involved in the Red Sox Brewers benches clearing? Were you at that game? Did I get involved in the benches clearing? Well, how would I get involved in a benches clearing in a random American League baseball game between the Boston Red Sox and the Milwaukee Brewers?
I have a theory.
Do you have a theory?
I have a theory on how you could have been involved.
I could have been involved.
So do you remember when Aaron Boone got ejected from the game because a fan in the first row yelled something at the umpire?
I do.
You could have yelled something at the other team. They thought it came from the dugout. Brouhaha started, and it was all because of you.
We're 54 minutes into the show, and Doug finally used the word brouhaha. My night is complete. So no, I wasn't at that game, but I was at, just let me talk about this just for a brief moment. I was at a Boston-Milwaukee game last week. My son, he's a teenager, but he and I have this thing where we try to go and see as many stadiums as we can see. And we had the Memorial Day weekend. I took an extra day off from work, and I thought, let's go see a couple games at some stadiums we've never seen. So he and I went to Boston. I'd never been to Fenway Park. And the truth is, selfishly, we went to Boston because my brother lives in Boston, and he just had his first kid, and we got to see his daughter, and she's gorgeous, and it's my first niece, and I got to hold her, and she's so small that I was terrified to hold her. But we also went to a game at Fenway Park. And let me just tell you, Fenway Park, You can tell it was built in the 1200s. But man, that is a stadium. And I've been to Wrigley Field, which is also old, does not compare. Mostly because the Cubs play there. But we had a blast. At Fenway Park. Really enjoyed it. We were not at the game where the benches cleared. I wish we had been. But I didn't know who to cheer for because I don't like the Red Sox. I really don't like the Brewers. I wanted them to lose so the Reds could make up some ground. But the Brewers won big. It was Friday night. We also decided the other stadium we were going to go to that we hadn't seen was in New York, Citi Field. And so we got tickets for the Mets and Dodgers and thought, well, this be good because the Dodgers are going to, they suck now that the Reds beat them into submission. Well, the game got rained out. So we're going to have to go back to Citi Field at some point. But Fenway Park is, as much as I hate to admit it because I don't like the Red Sox, it was worth the price of admission. Next question, unless you have some comment about Fenway Park, Doug.
I could talk about Wrigley all day, but I've got nothing on Fenway.
Yeah. Wrigley, I didn't love. Even though I saw the Reds play there.
I didn't see the Reds play there, but I still didn't like it either way. It smelled like urine.
No, it was not. Well, that's the official scent of Cubs fans everywhere. Dave Magram asks this, Doug. First of all, Dave, you asked Doug a question and not me. How dare you? How dare you, my friend? Doug, who on the Reds pitching staff goes through more balls per game? I think he's talking about baseballs.
I hope so.
I'm leaning towards Sam Mole. That dude will get a fresh new ball and toss it like last night's leftovers. I don't know if you have an answer to that because that's a question, but I have a take.
I do have an answer. I'm going to go with Graham Ashcraft. He throws a lot of innings. He doesn't strike out a lot of guys. Well, when you give up contact, you generally throw that ball out of play. So I think that's got to be the answer. That's what I'm going with.
All right. Sure. Why not?
Yeah.
Does it frustrate you as much as it does me? And it should not frustrate me this much, but nowadays they throw a ball in the dirt and the catcher tosses it to the side and they get a new ball. Come on. What are we even doing here? Back in my day, I'm not going to finish that. Go ahead, Doug.
But they're getting free batting practice balls now. That's what they're doing.
All right, I guess.
It's all I can come up with.
James Urban asked this question. Would our beer league softball team, and for those of you that don't know, here at the Riverfront, if you join the Patreon community, patreon.com/riverfrontcincy, you get a position on our beer league softball team. Would our beer league softball team beat the current Reds in a 3-game series?
Is this a question for me or for you? Because I feel like this is sort of a baseball question, and I was supposed to get the baseball questions.
That's true. I was getting ready to answer it, and then I realized, yeah. Well, I'm going to answer it anyway because James.
You go first because I have a fun answer.
Well, Doug, you may not understand this, but James Urban, he's 74 years old. Sometimes he gets a little confused, and so we're gonna treat him with more respect than we're going to ignore that he ignored the question or the direction about not giving baseball questions to me. So the answer is that's ridiculous, James. The Reds would win 1 game out of 3 against our beer league softball team would win 1 game out of 3 against the Cincinnati Reds in a 3-game series. But come on, we're probably going to lose 2 out of 3. Doug, what do you think?
Well, I guess I did kind of cheat by assuming that they were going to play baseball or softball. But it wasn't really specified what they were playing the 3-game series of. I'm with you. If they're going to play softball, Reds probably win 1. Maybe they get lucky and win 2. Sometimes pitchers just have a bad day. But what if they're playing chess?
Oh, interesting. Joey Votto's no longer on the Reds, so they don't have their chess master.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. It depends. It really does depend on what they're playing.
Well, I beat my wife in chess twice last week, and now she refuses to play me. So I'm a grandmaster, is what I'm telling you. And
I'll let you
so,
have it.
so we're going to beat him in chess. Gary Hilliard asks, this one is evidently directed towards me, but we're going to both try to answer this one. Captain Jack Sparrow, Captain Jonathan India, self-proclaimed Captain Jonathan India. Who has the better hair? Number one. Number two, who is the better captain? Captain Jack Sparrow, Captain Jonathan India, better hair, better captain. Better hair, Jonathan India. Better captain, Jack Sparrow, because Jonathan India is not actually the captain of the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds have not had a captain since Barry Smith, Barry Johnson, Barry Jones.
I think it was Barry Jones.
Yeah, Barry Jones. What do you think? What do you think, Doug Gray?
I agree with you. Jonathan India's hair is fantastic.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's got the flow working for him. It's hard to deny that one.
All right. So here's something I've never shown on the show here. If you're not watching on YouTube, you're missing out. But here is why I'm so envious of Jonathan India's hair. Little brief glimpse here. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say anything else. You got to watch it on YouTube if you want to see why I'm jealous. But who's the better captain, Doug?
Jack Sparrow, because he's an actual captain.
Oh, man. Doug and I, we're on the same wavelength, and that worries the heck out of me.
It should. It really should.
Final question. Chad. So the first question is for me, second for you. What's the greatest episode of Archer? Doug, have you ever watched the television program Archer?
I've seen a few episodes, but I'm more familiar with just the GIFs of Archer. And yes, they are GIFs, and I'll fight all of you over it.
Phrasing.
That's right.
One of the best ones. So I don't know if we really know the answer to that. But my favorite line in Archer comes from the first episode. So I'm going to say the first episode. And it's when Archer, who is the star of the show. I mean, you probably already knew that because of the title of the show, Archer. He uses this line, Johnny Bench called. He wants his mitt back. There's literally a Johnny Bench reference in the first episode of Archer. So if you haven't watched it, go watch that show. I'm not going to tell you what he was referring to when he talked about Johnny Bench and Johnny Bench's mitt. You really don't want to know. You really don't. This is a family podcast, but watch the first episode. All right, Doug, this one's for you. I obviously haven't a clue what I'm talking about, says Andrew Williams, but I see on Baseball Savant, by the way, great site, and with my own eyes that Ellie, now I presume he's talking about Ellie De La Cruz, but we'll presume that for the rest of this question. I see with my own eyes and on Baseball Savant that Ellie is topping everything. One of my theories is that he's been swinging at all the low splitters and changes and rolling over them, which he's done a better job of laying off of recently. Doug Gray, Andrew Williams wants to know, what are your thoughts?
So Ellie's kind of always been a ground ball guy, but let's break this down. He says recently he's noticed that, which sure, okay, we'll break it down to the 2 months of the season so far. His ground ball rate isn't really all that different between April and May. They're both, over 50%, which you don't want to be on that side of 50%. That's not ideal. But when Ellie was hitting the ball in the air in April, he was doing a lot of damage. When he hit the ball in the air, he hit it hard and in the air. I've actually got it pulled up here because, Chad was nice enough to send me these things in advance so I could really kind of dive into this. And Ellie hit, let's see, I think it's 14 baseballs in the air over 100 miles per hour in April. In May, that number is 1. You're not going to do damage when you're not hitting the ball hard in the air. And I think that's kind of been one of the bigger issues. And it's really getting back to the point there. It's why I feel like that's why it's been more noticeable, because when he is making contact and getting the ball in the air, he's not doing anything with it. So when you're constantly seeing the ball on the ground, which you did see in April, but I think that the damage he was doing on everything else was hiding the fact that he was grounding out a lot. And some of those grounders were getting through because he was also hitting them hard on the ground too. That's just not happening here in May. Now, this wasn't a part of the question, but I also kind of want to get back to it. It's similar to the Rhett Lauder thing, or not the Rhett Lauder thing, Jonathan India thing. I think that he's being too patient to a fault lately. The walks are up, which is good. You want to see that. He's not chasing as much, but I feel like he's taking too many pitches in the middle of the strike zone. And I don't know why that. I mean, maybe it's, he's trying to just work counts more, see more pitches. I'm not sure that he's the kind of guy that should do that, though, given that even when he swings at strikes, he doesn't make contact at a high rate. When you get a strike in the middle of the zone, swing at it. And I feel like he's been taking a lot of those, which leaves him in unfavorable counts to him, which probably has led to him hitting more pitchers' pitches, and you're going to ground out more. You're going to top the ball more because they're not hitters' pitches. So I think there's probably something to that. I don't really know the answer, but I would like to see him be more aggressive. Not necessarily chasing pitches out of the zone, but just on pitches in the zone. I feel that he's just been taking a lot more of those. And again, maybe I'm wrong. Heck, I could look up the data. I just can't do it right this second. But it feels like from watching the games that he's taken more very hittable strikes lately than he was earlier in the season when he was finding success.
He's a kid. He'll figure it out.
He's 22 years old. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's my theory. He'll figure it out. All right. It's about time we stick a pin in this one. So thank you all for joining us here around the Riverfront Network. Welcome to the jungle. Doing great work. Our bingo show over there. Red Leg Roundtable. Got a good episode coming up this week. Excited for that one. Late night Reds. Doug told me before we went on air that Tim and Ben at Late Night Reds are kicking booty. I think that's what he said. Is that what you said, Doug?
That is what I said. We'll leave it at that.
Exactly. DM me if you want to know the full story there. No, do not, because I'm not going to tell you.
Late Night Reds, guys, you can get a hold of me. I'll tell you what I actually said. It was not bad. Yes. I'm just an idiot. It's fine.
No, he's not an idiot. It was funny. Doug made a funny joke, and I laughed. And so anyway, thank you for listening. This is the Riverfront. Tell your friends about us. Go join the family at patreon.com/riverfrontcincy. Before we go, I want to just say rest in peace, Bill Walton, an absolute legend in basketball and in life. And Doug, any final thoughts for us here?
No, I got nothing.
Well, Doug, I appreciate you joining us tonight. It's been a while since we've talked here in this format, and it's always a good time. Thank you all for listening. We have a good time here on the show every single week. Go subscribe, smash that like button if you're on the YouTubes. Find us on your favorite podcast app Doug, are the Reds going to win 70% of the games the rest of the season? Because I believe they are.
No, they're not.
Doug
I'm not a gambler. I might make a bet on that if somebody gave me some actual action on that one.
All right. Well, Doug's a Reds hater. I'm a Reds lover. I lick the boots of Nick Kroll. I carry water for the team. You all know that. Shout out to Adam Dunn. Shouts to Lisa Alberto Bonilla, Wayne Krinchicki, and of course our friend Eli Cash. For Doug Gray, Eric Owens, and Bill Walton. This is Chad Dotson saying, so long, everyone.